Hi art students. Today we're going to talk about linoleum printing, and this will be the first part. This part is where you do your design and you do the carving, and then I'll have another video that shows you the second part, which is how to print it. So this is linoleum. It's kind of like an eraser. It's flexible, and it really feels like an eraser, and actually they work as an eraser too. There is one side that's smoother and one side that's a little bit rougher. You can carve either side, but I prefer the smoother side. But if you would mess up on this side, you can just flip it over. What you want to do with the linoleum is first get your design on the linoleum. So you can freehand draw a design, or you can also do an image transfer. Sorry, I'm looking for my paper here. Like we did on the scratch art. So if you have art that you already made that you really like, or if you need a certain image, you can get the image or your art, a copy of it, and then put graphite pencil all over the back. And then you can lay it graphite side down on the linoleum and trace over it. And it will image transfer onto your linoleum. Like that. So that can help you out too. Just keep in mind some things like we talked about with scratch art. With linoleum too, I would try to carve away about 50%, give or take a little bit. Because some people, if they're going to do a duck, they would just carve the outline of the duck and then print it. And it's not very interesting then. So you definitely want to carve away more than that. Also, you kind of need to think about, it's going to be like a negative. So typically, if I drew these lines, they would be dark. But when you carve these lines, then when you ink it and print it, the parts that you carved will actually be the parts that are white. So like if I'm going to ink it with blue ink, whatever I carve will be white, and whatever I don't carve will print blue. So you just got to kind of think about that reversal, that switch. So if I want the duck to be blue, I'd want to carve around the duck so that around the duck is white and the duck stays blue. So just kind of think about that when you're carving. I don't totally have my design. I could work on this a little bit more. But then what I need to do, so this is a handle. And you can kind of see inside the handle, there's some parts there. And if you righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, if I turn it to the right, it's going to be all the way tightened. But then if I loosen it, I'm ready to put in a tip. So there's different size carving tips for this. So you'll have to just kind of look at them and see. Some of them are wider, some of them are narrower. So like this one's going to take wider cuts out of the linoleum and kind of a deeper cut. Whereas a number 1 is going to be a pretty fine, thin line. I really like the hook. There's a hook too. And I can kind of help you with this in person too, but you have to insert it between the ball in the middle, and then there's kind of a loose part on the outside, and then tighten it. These will cut you, so you got to be careful. This is called a bench hook, and it hooks on the edge of the table, and then you put your linoleum against the lip of the bench hook, because then you don't have to have your hand on the linoleum, because if you have your hand on the linoleum, you might cut yourself. So you want your hand out of the way. The nice thing with this one, this is like a hook. You're pulling it to carve away the linoleum like that. And then let me show you just how, because the other kind you push instead of pulling. So let's grab a number 3 here, so kind of in the middle. So when you're using the ones that you push with, you don't want your hand up here because then you're pushing towards your hand and that's when you'll cut yourself. A lot of times I put 2 hands on the cutter and then push. So if I need to push this way, I would turn the linoleum so that I'm not pushing towards my hands. The linoleum carves fairly easily, so you don't have to push too hard and force it, which is good because when you're forcing something is usually when you cut yourself. So again, I got to constantly be thinking about anything I carve away is going to be white. Anything I leave is going to be the color of the ink that I use to print. So this will take me a little while to carve. In the next video, I will show you the finished project and I will show you how to ink and print it. But in this video, I mainly wanted to talk about safety, how to use the bench hook, how to make sure you don't cut yourself, how to get your image on here with the image transfer if you need to, and then thinking about that 50-50. Don't just carve an outline, you know, like we talked about with the scratch art. Don't just do an outline. Really carve some stuff away to get contrast so that some of it's going to show up white and some of it's going to show up the ink color. One more thing that I forgot to mention, anything that you do is going to print backwards. You'll be able to see this more in the printing video, but you know, so this duck is facing to the right, but when I go to print it, if you can imagine, the beak turns to the left, so the beak's over here now. So when I print that, then the duck will be facing to the left. So everything prints opposite. And the reason why you need to know that is words, specifically, because if you're going to use any words, you'd have to write them on here backwards so that when you print them, they'll print forward. So keep that in mind if you're going to do any words on your print.